Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Mormon Atheist. All right, so welcome, apostate congregation. I have a great show for you guys tonight. Tonight, we are going to show you the correlations between Joseph Smith, the Mormon prophet, the founder of the LDS Church, right, and William Morgan, the Freemason Martyr. Okay, that died for releasing Masonic secrets. Okay, so we're going to kind of start a little series here, showing just exactly how uh, this connection and is taking place. And one of the questions I have as an ex-Mormon myself, um, uh, is why does the LDS Church have so much information? Like when you Google William Morgan, a whole lot of LDS websites, information, and all of this stuff come up on the websites. And so it's always been a question for me as to why that would be, right? So welcome, apostate congregation. That's what we're going to talk about today. And today is July 24th. Today is a significant day because it is today is in the state of Utah. It's the Day of Independence. The day of their statehood is July 27th. The day that they've is that the day that they founded? Like came across? I think that's the day they came over the mountain. Was July 24th. Is when they entered into Utah, right? So anyways, so that's what we're going to talk about. So welcome, apostate congregation. Like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We are just getting started, and there's going to be quite a bit of stuff. So we're going to talk about the connection of William Morgan and Joseph Smith and how that works. So those of you that don't know, Joseph Smith was the Mormon prophet, the Mormon founder. His original church was called the Church of Christ. Okay. Well, that is significant because of what is taking place in 1826, right? And we're talking about the abduction and murder of William Morgan as well, right? And so the Church of Christ in a lot of these books says that a lot of these books say that the Church of Christ facilitated William Morgan or the Masons in abducting and the murder of William Morgan. Okay, so to kind of set the stage, right? What we know of William Morgan was he was, we don't really know much. He was abducted for releasing Masonic secrets. He was writing a book, okay, and which is this book right here, Illustrations of Masonry by, David C. Miller is one of the publishers. And that name is important because that name also has to do with Mormonism as well, right? So there's a lot of correlations, and I'm going to show you tonight. We're going to talk about, so this is William Morgan's book, Illustrations on Masonry. Okay, this book was published in 1826, I believe. Was it 1826? Yeah. 1827. That's when this book was published, 1827. Okay, and this is William Morgan's book. Okay, so now we're going to go to another book. Okay, it's Solomon Southwick's book. Okay, Solomon Southwick. This book came out in 1827, a year after Morgan's death. So it's very important that you know who Solomon Southwick is, right? Solomon Southwick was the creator of the Anti-Masonic movement. Him and a guy named Thurlow Weed Thurlow Weed is another name that is associated with Mormonism, right? It's not it's very distantly, let's say that, very distantly, right? You will find Thurlow Weed's name intertwined, but very distantly, I guess is the right way to say it, right? So we're going to talk about this book, and we're going to kind of walk through the connections, because next, on the next episode, we're going to talk about this book, Light on Masonry, okay? And what the significance is between illustrations of Masonry and Light on Masonry. Okay, I need you guys to stay with me on these books, because these three books right here, okay, Solomon Southwick, David Brainerd, and William Morgan, okay, they all have a significant role in the anti-Masonic movement, and they all play a part in this, right? And so we're going to talk about how these are anti-Masonic books. These are not Mormon books. These are not LDS books. The LDS is not around yet. There is no Mormonism, right? So when I open Solomon Southwick's book, right, there's illustrations, okay? I get to the dedication page. Now you can see the dedication. This is, we're like 2 pages in, right? Okay, well, I got T.F. Talbot right there. T.F. Talbot is a Mormon person, right? We know T.F. Talbot. Okay, we have Josiah Porter, right there, right? Okay, there's Thurlow Weed. There's Thurlow Weed. This is an anti-Masonic book, Apostates. This is not anything to do with Mormonism. But I'm going to show you stuff tonight that's in this book that is going to blow your mind, because you'll read this and you'll be like, that is Mormonism. Like, that is Mormonism, right? Because remember what Light on Masonry is. You guys got to stay with me on this. What is Light on Masonry? Light on Masonry, he's telling you about the Church of Masonry. Okay? That's important, right? You have to stay with me on this. Okay, so then we go to what is this? The Lewiston Convention Center. Okay, all right. So this is all on the dedication page, right? So then, all throughout this book, right? It's only 140, or it's 111 pages long. This book is. It's 111 pages. And then the rest of it is appendix. And the appendix is actually more, in my mind, the appendix is actually more important than the actual book itself. But yeah, it's really good. So anyways, let's get back to it. So we're in the appendix, right? So now we're gonna skip a bunch of pages, right? Because I want to get to the point of how all this stuff, correlates, right? Here we have David C. Miller's name again on page 11, right? And then you can read what they're talking about and why his name is in here, right? And this book is about William Morgan, okay? This book is about what happened to William Morgan, and it's a warning against Freemasonry, right? Solomon Southwick is telling you, like, hey, but in this, he's also describing things. And the thing that gets me, right, about this book is he's describing stuff that has happened in the past, okay? And you have to remember, this is in 1827, this book comes out, right? Okay, I'm going to be on another episode. I'm going to be talking about another book that was written. I'm not going to give you the dates, because I want to surprise you, because it's good. But Smith is also in that book as well. So there's 4 books right here that I'm talking about that it literally either says Joseph Smith, Joe Smith, Smith from Vermont, Joseph Smith, the Mormon Prophet. These are the words that are in these books, okay? And these are anti-Masonic books, right? Now, you have to wonder, right? Like, what is going on here, right? So let's get into it, right? And so when they talk about the kidnapping of William Morgan, right? Okay, well, right there it says Lodum Lawson, right? You see it, Lodum Lawson. You can read that little highlighted paragraph right there. There's the page number above it, Lodum Lawson. Okay, well, in Mormonism, we know who Lodum Lawson is. There's a story of Lodum Lawson in Mormonism, right? Okay, now one could argue, but that's a pretty distinctive name. Do you know what I'm saying? Lodum Lawson. Okay, you can look him up in Mormonism, and he has a story in Mormonism, right? You can Google his name and you can look him up, right? So it actually says, that paragraph, that little sentence says, Lodum Lawson, since convicted of kidnapping Morgan and now in prison for the deed, came forward under the mask of friendship and persuaded Morgan to permit him to pay the debt inducing Morgan to believe that it was out of pure friendship and that he would take to his house. Poor Morgan was too credulous. He agreed to Lawson's proposal, but the moment that later got him out of jail, the moment the latter got him out of jail, he was seized violently by Lawson and one or two other persons, and notwithstanding his cries of murder, was forced into a carriage and drove off. Jehu-like, since which he was not returned, nor have any tidings been had of him, exceeding that it has been clearly provoked at the last Ontario sessions that he was taken, confined to the magazine at Fort Niagara. Now, Fort Niagara, that's important, because Fort Niagara, you have to understand, oh, what was it? Not Kingston, but Watertown. Was it Waterstown? I think it was Waterstown. Waterstown, because in these books they describe how it's at the mouth of the river that flows into the Ontario. Okay, so that is not Niagara Falls. Like, I don't know, maybe it is, but there's no fort there. There's I don't know, maybe I was looking differently, but I was thinking Watertown, but I could be wrong, because that's the river that flows into the Ontario, right? It makes sense to me, because Niagara was the territory, like it was the wilderness. They called it the wilderness Niagara, right? So anyways, it makes sense to me. It's Waters. I think the name is Waterstown. Kingston is on the Ontario side, and then Waterstown, I think, is on the New York side. And Waterstown, I think, is the lodge he's talking about. That's what I think. I don't know. I could be wrong, because there is an actual historical lodge there today. Right? But they're telling you that lodge, see, if you Google that lodge, it tells you, I think in 1809 is when that was built. But in these books, it tells you that was there before. It was a Masonic lodge built in the 1700s. So, I mean, they're telling you this in these books. I mean, why would they lie about that? Do you understand? Does that make sense? This is Masonic history. Okay, so anyways, they're going through and they're talking about books and see these. The significance thing is you can look up these newspapers and these other books, and you can Google them, and you can go to newspaper archive type websites, and you can Google these things and look them up for yourself, and you can see this stuff, right? And so, you know, Canandaigua is mentioned a lot. Judge Birdsall, you know, there he is, Judge Birdsall. Judge Birdsall has stuff to do, Genesee County. Okay, but then I want to get into the heart, the juicy stuff here, right? So when it comes to Joseph, right, in just this one little book alone, right, in Joseph's warning against, five times he's mentioned in this book, right? And so that's just this one book, right? So here we go on page 26, right here, page 26. Is that the right page? Let me make sure I got it right here. Page 26, in the highlighted area right here, you can see page 26, Freemasonry, right? There he is again. That's the first one. That's the first one right there. Okay. So let me read to you what that says. It says, yes, Robespierre and Danton, Legendre and Marat were the wretches who ministered at the dark altars of the self-styled Illuminati, Elias Masonic Fraternity of France, as Smith and Whitney and Lawson and Howard and Gillis and Schofield have been the high priests of iniquity, who have either directed or performed the bloody rites at Niagara, of which the brave, honest, unfortunate Morgan was the victim, and the total destruction of our constitutional liberties the object. That's what it says right there, folks. You can pause that, zoom in on it, and read it for yourself. Okay? It's on page 26. Okay? That's the first one. Okay, we'll get to the other ones. I want you to stay with me because this stuff gets deep and it gets complicated, and we're combining the occult versus religion, right? And we're considering Freemasonry part of the occult in this conversation. And so you have to correlate these things, right? And you have to correlate the stories of Joseph Smith in the early days, right? This is the 1820s, right? Okay. And so I want to draw your attention to the fact that we are talking about the 33rd Scottish Rite Masons here, right? Okay, so you have to go back to the Glasgow order, right, of what that is, right? And when they keep talking about the order, right? The order is referred to as Smith's order, right? We'll get to that in a minute, but Smith has an order, right? And they're talking about so if you look up in Mormonism, Joseph Smith also has what's called the Order of Enoch, okay? Now, the Order of Enoch is a very unknown thing in Mormonism, right? But you can Google it and you can look it up. And I want you to go to the Encyclopedia Britannica when you Google that, okay? Because the Encyclopedia Britannica is a very untouched source, right? It's going to tell you about the Order of Enoch, Joseph Smith's Order of Enoch, right? And that Order of Enoch is also what the 33rd Scottish Rites consider as the Royal Arch chapter, a Royal Arch chapter. Let me be clear about that. So it's a chapter of the 33rd Scottish Rites, okay? The Order of Enoch, right? And so when you read these old books and they're talking about, they describe Joseph about how he was a block keeper and the lambskin order, right? Okay, well, the lambskin order is another order, right? And these are, Joseph is affiliated with these lambskin orders, and these are 33rd Scottish Rite orders, right? Okay, well, it actually, like, you know, it goes into detail, right? And so let me tell you, let me show you, right? I'll read another one. Okay, they're talking about it just says the order, right? So it says, for it is a Scottish Rite order which now claims to be the oldest, and the followers of which are at this moment at war in Mexico, right? So that even right there leads you to wonder, like, the Mexican War, right? They're at war with Mexico. The Scottish Rites. This is in 1827, everybody, remember. Okay? So they're talking about the Mexican War, okay? Which, stay with me, apostates. Like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. But I really want you to stay with me, okay? Okay, I'm going to start over on this little pair. I'm on page 27 of the book. Page 27. Okay, so they're talking about the orders, right? It says, for it is the Scottish Rite which now claims to be the oldest, and the followers of which are at this moment, 1827, at war in Mexico with the followers of the York Rite, which lately found its way thither, it says. Thither. I love the language they use in these books, right? This York Rite is derived from the Grand Lodge of New York. It was introduced into Mexico probably by two of Morgan's murderers. LDS people. We know people went on a mission to Mexico. We know that they sent the LDS people sent LDS people, well, to Mexico to go to war. We know that as fact. That really did happen. So right here, they're confirming that story, right? But you have to understand these dates. These dates play such an important role in how this machine has been changed and evolved over time, right? That the LDS the LDS Church has just completely distanced itself so far away from William Morgan, and they've done everything they can. But these old books tell the story. That's what I'm telling you, apostates. That's what I've been telling you for almost 2 years now. That you have to read these old books because the truth is in these books. I watched a scholar the other day on another podcast. Okay, and apparently he was an ex-Mormon or something along these lines or whatever, but he was a legitimate PhD scholar. And he's talking about Mormonism, right? And how this is going about, and he doesn't understand the blowback of the different, the different names of the churches, right? And how the churches have changed over time. Apostate congregation, can you listen to the absurdity of that question? You apostates have been watching my channel long enough. You fellow subscribers, like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Okay? You guys have you've been reading these books, and you know how absurd that statement is. Because the names of the church over time, the Church of Christ, the church does everything it can to distance itself. Lately, in the last year, 2 years, okay, they've been going towards the Church of Christ. Like it's on a few of their websites and, things like this. They're coming around. But apostates, it just goes to show you that the word is getting out, right? We are William Morgan. We are making a difference, right? We're not going to stand for this. We're going to show everybody what the Church of Masonry and Joseph Smith did. Joseph Smith murdered William Morgan. And it's in these books. Apostates, I'm not lying to you. It's in these books. I just showed you one. Should I read it again? You can rewind it and listen to it, okay? All right, let's keep on. All right, so let's get going because there's more Joseph Smith in a book about Masonry, okay? So, they're talking, he goes on and he talks about the secret institution, right? A few sect of the parties and those perhaps being a portion of the community. The answer to this question is obvious. How can those who enter into a secret conclave and there pledge themselves to go all lengths and on all occasions to serve the promise, each other's interests, who would profess their attachment to this secret institution or conclave, the secret institutions in big letters, or conclave, its laws and ordinances, and to its members, connectively and individually, forming with them a chain of artificial friendship, connected by oaths, the promises and the penalties of which are at war with all of the obligations of God. He's talking about the institution, apostates. Okay? We today call this the Mormon Church, right? So the obligations of God and their country, how can they, I ask you, who are thus trammeled, thus bound by the fetters of a secret combination, go forth as assessors, as jurors, as ministers of justice, as electors, as lawgivers, prepared to exercise those high and important trusts. It goes on. Functions of a free government faithfully and initially in spiritual patriotism and justice. History is full of proof that whenever and wherever men have become firmly connected to sects or parties, their religious or political, that their attachments to their sect or party has expelled them from their breast that divine spirit of universal charity and benevolence. Folks, it's in these books. These guys are warning you, right? I mean, it's all over. I could read this stuff right. Okay, we are Morgan because one of the murders of Morgan in his flight from justice passed through the city of Albany and would have been arrested for it if he had not been warned of his danger and aided to escape by one or more Royal Arch Masons. He's telling you, apostates, the order of Enoch, follow the trails. But let this wretched outlaw go where he may. The ghost of his hapless victim will rise ever and then onto his view, and continually agitated by the horrors of guilt and conscience, he may exclaim in the language of Milton. And then he goes on to read a passage. Apostate congregation. That is on page 34. We are William Morgan, okay? I love that passage. I love that passage. We are the ghost of Morgan. Let the wretched outlaw. All right, do you understand, apostates? Man, we're Morgan. All right, so let's make some connections. Okay? Enter temple apprentice. Apostates. When I read this to you, I want you to think of the temple ceremonies. I want you to think of other stuff, right? We're going to read the fellow craft. Okay, well, we're not going to read them because it's too long. But right here, okay, on page, what page is this? 38. On page 38. Read these, okay? Entered apprentice, the craft. Okay, apostates. It's very, very important for you to understand what the craft is. The craft is the magic of Solomon. Okay? Understand that. You have to read the Testaments of Solomon to understand Freemasonry. This goes deep, guys. I told you, you got to stay with me, right? In order to understand what Freemasonry is even about, you have to understand who Solomon is and what the Temple of Solomon even means and represents, and who Hiram Abith is, apostate congregation. In Mormonism, the name Hiram is big. Okay? Why do you think that is? In a lot of these books that we read, that we talk about on this channel, they talk about how Hiram, the name Hiram in early Mormonism is a title. Okay? In Stenhouse's book, okay, they talk about how Hiram is a title in the early days. It's not a name, it's a title. Okay? That's why I said look up John Page. Okay? I just gave it away in my last video. I said look up who John Page is, right? And the Church of Christ and William Smith's book, right? This stuff correlates, and it's so complicated and so twisted. But if you follow these names, apostate congregation, you will get there. You got to understand what Solomon is, who he is, what does he represent? What is John the Baptist, right? Who is John the Baptist? Because John the Baptist is very important in Masonry, right? Apostate congregation. There is so much to this other than me just sitting here saying Joseph Smith murdered Morgan. Okay, but you got to understand why. I don't want to come across as just, okay, like I'm saying this. Okay, I have done the dive. I've done the research. I know what John the Baptist's significance is. Okay, apostate congregation, who baptized Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery? John the Baptist. Okay? Do you understand what the significance of this is? Connect these dots. Why would John the Baptist baptize Joseph Smith in Mormonism? Apostate congregation, these are valid questions. Okay? I'm not on here just saying Joseph Smith murdered William Morgan for no reason. Do you understand? Okay? Joseph Smith died with the talisman, the Jupiter talisman in his pocket. Apostate congregation, here's that talisman right there. Is that it right there? Yeah, right there. Right there. That's in the Greater Keys of Solomon. That's in the Greater Key of Solomon. Right there. Apostate congregation, this is the back of the Jupiter talisman that was in the pocket of Joseph Smith when he died. That same talisman. That's the front right there. That's the front right there. And you can Google it, Joseph Smith Jupiter Talisman. Google it, and you can see it for yourself. That's the church picture. That's the back. Okay? Do you understand the esoterics of Mormonism? John the Baptist, who is Solomon? You got to understand who Solomon even is in the Temple of Solomon. What is the whole idea of all of these temples in Mormonism? It's to build the Temple of Solomon. They say it all the time. These guys, Bednar, they say it all the time, apostates. Connect these dots. What's going on here? This is the Church of Masonry. The LDS Church is the Church of Masonry. When you read Apostate Congregation, for God's sake, what did I just do with that book? Here it is. Okay. Enter apprentice to all which I do most solemnly and sincerely promise, I swear, without the least evocation, mental reservation, or self-evasion of mind, in me, whatever, binding myself under no less penalty than to have my throat cut across my throat cut across, my tongue torn out by the roots, and my body buried in the rough sands of the sea at low water mark, where the tide ebbs and flows, twice in 24 hours, so help me God, and keep me steadfast in the due performance of the same. Fellow craft, to which all, as above, binding myself under no less penalty than to have my breast torn open, my heart and vitals taken from thence, and thrown over my shoulder and carried into the valleys of Josaphat, where to become prey to the wild beasts of the field and vultures of the air, if ever I should prove willful guilty of violations, any part of this my solemn oath or obligation to the fellow craft, Mason. What is the craft, apostates? Okay. The greater keys of Solomon. In Masonry, the craft is the magic of Solomon. Okay. Joseph Smith had the Jupiter Talisman in his pocket. I just showed it to you, right? It's in the Greater Keys of Solomon. Okay. Master Mason. To all, as before above, mentioned above, binding myself under the penalty. So we're reading out of the Solomon Warning Against Freemasonry, written in 1827. And these oaths are remarkably like the temple ceremonies, right? Okay, so let's keep going. I don't want to get too hung up on that. You guys can read it, right? Okay, but I want to get into some of the more Smith stuff, right? St. John of Jerusalem, the Holy Order of St. John of Jerusalem. Apostates, you got to understand who St. John is. Okay, you got to understand. Mr. Hollister, okay, the warning, right? So there's tons of warnings, right? On page 43, right? They're warning you again, right? Apostates, I highly recommend you buying this book. It's only 111 pages long, and then the appendix are like 40 pages long. All right, so here, this is important right here. So they talk about like how the laws of chastity. Okay, this is in Freemasonry, right? The laws of chastity, right? So they're talking about women and the wives and stuff like that. And it says, Nocturnal altars are sworn not to violate the persons of the wives or daughters of the mystic brotherhood, knowing them to be the wives and daughters of the said brotherhood. Okay, so they're all through this. They're literally like what Solomon Southwick is talking about here. It is literally describing Mormonism all throughout this book. Okay, but he's giving you where this stuff comes from. He's telling you where this stuff is coming from, right? So he's talking about the disciples of the Arabian impostor, or the followers of Jonah Southcote. Lucifer himself would find admittance to her honors, her rites, and her mysteries. Okay, you can Google that lady, right? Okay, and her parallels to Joseph Smith are just striking. They're just so striking, right? So, but also you're going to understand that in this book, this Joseph Smith story, this Masonic martyr story, right? This is not the first story. He talks about Smith, Murdoch, and Morgan, how these are previous stories from the past. Morgan was just the latest one in 1827, but Smith and Murdoch were previous martyrs. And his name was Joseph Smith. You can Google this stuff, man. Okay, in the day, like in the 1700s, these were people that were supposedly releasing these Masonic secrets, but what they were doing though was they were advancing something that they were promoting, and they were doing it under the guise of releasing these secrets. But they were actually real Masons though, and the Masons really did kill them, right? So it makes you wonder, like, what the, apostates on this channel, I talk about all the time, how I don't really believe, something smells. I can't put my finger on it, but just Joseph Smith, the story, I'm not buying it. Like Fraser magazine, they talk about how Orson Hyde, think about this, apostates. Orson Hyde in Fraser magazine, in William Dixon's book, also, they cannot describe Joseph Smith. Orson Hyde, think about that, apostates. Orson Hyde. Who was in the jail cell when Joseph Smith was shot? Who, apostates? Orson Hyde was in the jail. Remember, he got his watch shot. It's in the museum. It's in the Mormon museum. His watch, that the bullet stopped his watch, apostates, and he miraculously lives. But he can't describe Joseph Smith. In not only 2 books, you can, but several, they say that these people can't describe the particulars. They can tell you the story, but they can't describe the particulars. It makes you wonder. It's a head scratcher. I'll say that. It is a head scratcher. But when you start putting these books together, and when you start reading just old history books of the day, old Masonic books, you have to understand, if you're going to study Freemasonry, apostates, you have to understand the Testaments of Solomon. If you're studying Freemasonry and you have never read the Testaments of Solomon, get the fuck out of here. Get out. You don't belong anywhere in the Freemason space whatsoever. Because it's a staple. That the Testament and Treaties of Solomon is what Freemasonry is all about. You understand that, apostate? So unless you know what that says and who Hiram Abif is, and unless you go through all those mysticalities, the Jewish Kabbalah, all that kind of stuff in there and what it's saying to you, you're never going to understand Freemasonry anyways. And you're just going to keep spinning your wheels and being like, oh, that's the coolest thing. Look, the handshake. Oh, the Mormons got an apron. F you, people. Okay, you don't even know what you're talking about at first. You're just getting clicks. Okay, your paychecks may be fat, I don't know, but you look pretty. If it wasn't for your looks, nobody would watch you freaking channels because they're so lame. Apostates, do you understand what I'm saying? You got to know who St. John is. What is St. John's role in Freemasonry, right? And how do these apply in Mormonism? St. John baptized Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery, apostates. Why in Mormons don't believe in St. John. So why would St. John baptize Joseph Smith? These are questions, apostates, you got to answer, or you got to ask. Okay? When we're talking about the order, we're talking about the order of Enoch. Well, wait a minute, because Brigham Young was Joseph's not supposed to know about Enoch. But if you, Encyclopedia Britannica tells you a very different story of the order of Enoch than what the Mormon story tells you about Brigham Young. Okay? You got to put the Royal Arch Mason fact in there, right? Okay, let's move on. Okay, look, speaking of which, on page 65, they're talking about the lambskin order. On page 65, apostates, okay, of this book. Okay, I want to get to let's go to page 51, apostates. Like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. You know, I've got this whole thing kind of, you know, one of the interesting things, Washington's farewell address, George Washington, his farewell address. I really want you guys to read that, right? Because it's so, no man should be allowed to hold any office of honor or profit under them who would not, in assuming the duties of it, swear to the subscribed and declaration. This goes on to today, apostates. So what happens with Obama? Washington is telling you, right? George Washington, in his farewell address, you can Google that and look it up. I highly recommend it. That is so prevalent in what is happening today, apostates. It's making the hair on my arm stand up. Washington's farewell address. Swear and to subscribe a declaration in addition to the oaths, or oaths now in use, that he was not then a member and would not thereafter be one in any self-credited combination whatsoever. This is a great. Listen to that. This is at the end. Okay. What says in the farewell address, the inevitable legacy bequeathed us by the father of the country. It warns us. Okay, this is so prevalent to today. Okay, this is George Washington's farewell address. It warns us that clear and emphatical language, which characterizes all that Washington ever said or wrote, to beware of secret associations. Big bold letters. Beware of secret associations under whatever plausible character, because they are liable to become, in the course of time and things, potent engines by which cunning and ambitious and unpredictable men will be enabled to subvert the power of the people and usurp to themselves the reins of government. Chilling. That's George Washington, folks. Okay, and he goes on. That's just a piece of his letter. He goes on to a lot of stuff, right? All right. Anyways, let's get back. Page 51. I want to go to page 51. Page 51. Okay, so it says the laws of Freemasonry had not at that time compelled the murder of Morgan, nor had her other midnight murders of Smith and Murdoch been brought to light. You see, apostates? Page 51, Smith is mentioned again. But in the context of what he's talking about, Morgan is just the latest victim. The Smith story has happened before, right? This motif of a martyr releasing Masonic secrets. Morgan is not the first one to do this. Okay? You can actually Google these. What was it? Oneida, Frederick Oneida or something like that. Oneida. It's called the Oneida Papers. You can Google that, and that guy in the 1700s or the 1600s, I forget exactly off the top of my head, but he did the same thing. He wrote a book and he translated it from an unknown language, right? He did the exact same thing that Joseph Smith did. They're called the Oneida Papers. The guy that wrote those papers, the Oneida, where the name of those papers comes from, that's who I'm talking about right now. So this martyr story of releasing Masonic secrets is not new. Murdoch, you can actually look up Murdoch, and his wife. It actually tells you in both of these books of Light on Masonry and this book, and other books. I'm reading another book right now that's about William Morgan, and they tell you the story of Murdoch, about how he told the secrets to his wife. He was drunk, and his wife was a big mouth, a blabbermouth, and she went around and was telling everybody these Masonic secrets. And Murdoch was mysteriously found with his throat slit and his tongue removed in the dead of night to shut up his wife. That's the story of Murdoch. Okay, I forget his first name. I have it written down somewhere. I don't know, but Murdoch. It took me a really long time to find his name. Oh, you know what? James Murdoch. I possibly might have it right here, actually. Murdoch. I don't think I do in this book, but Murdoch. It took me forever to find that guy's name. He wrote a letter. Who did he write a letter to? He wrote a letter to somebody. Murdoch. His dad or something like that wrote a letter. Oh man, it's on the tip of my tongue. I'm thinking about it, and I just now barely thought of this. I didn't even think about this before, but yeah, Murdoch wrote a letter, and I want to say James Murdoch is his name. Murdoch, shit, what? His son wrote a letter. That's it. His son wrote a letter to somebody. I don't know. I got to think about this, man. Oh, look, here's some old notes. Apostate congregation, don't you just love going back through old notes? These are notes that I wrote about a year ago. Okay, so I've been saying in my last, Joseph Smith died in 1834. Okay, and I've been telling you that there's a lot of stuff a lot of old magazine, right? So I wrote down some of these So I wrote down some of these. Dude, I totally forgot these were in here. Wow. Love it. Look. All right. So here, I'll hold it up because it's kind of a lot to read and you guys can screenshot it. But up here, there's these things. These are the names of the papers. And that's what it says. Joe Smith is dead. Joe Smith dead. 1834. Okay. You can screenshot that. Okay. W. Parrish, Smith scribe. Martin or Oliver, probably. Martin. Okay. Well, I've been Googling this stuff, and these are a year ago. So I've actually been Googling this stuff. And I've said, holy shit, I really should go back through some of these old notes. All right. So anyways, back to what we were looking for. We're looking for Murdoch, but I can't remember. It was James. I know I got his name in here somewhere. Anyway, so let's move on. Murdoch, his son wrote a letter, something along those lines. All right, let's keep going. Okay, so again, folks, we're looking in Solomon Warning. Like and subscribe if you haven't. This stuff is fascinating, right? So, you know, I even got a highlight here on page 56. You can read all of this right here, and I have a little note that says Fairview Temple. So that kind of, in a way, relates to what Fairview Temple was saying, right? Or the issue that's going on with Fairview Temple. I got over here on page 57, the lambskin order, right? Joseph was, if you read what the lambskin order was and how the person that is making the aprons, those aprons are made out of lambskin. Joseph, there's a story about how Joseph when he would make his aprons, he would make them out of lambskin. Okay, well, in these books, there's only one person that could make these lambskins aprons. Okay, and it was Smith from Vermont, right? The Hatter. They would refer to him sometimes as the Hatter. But you know what, though? I wish he actually says nice things about the Hatter. They call him a Hatter because well, for obvious reasons, I guess. But the Dutchman, right? So yeah, this is great stuff, apostates. But he's talking about the dresser of the lambskins, the paper stainer, right? Okay, well, you have to when you're connecting these dots, right? Brigham Young was a painter. Okay. So when they're referring to, they got the Hatter, the Dutchman, the painter, these people, right? But when they're describing these people, it's just so clear who they're talking about in the Mormon world, right? And so I'll leave it up to you to decide. This isn't a very long book, okay? The Paper Gilder, right? Okay, it's just so great. Okay, here's another one, Smith from Vermont. Okay, here we go. On page 67, apostates. Page 67, we're going to talk about, but with the cool sagecy of the beaver and the calculation of the Wall Street shaver, right? Got it. This is the language of the 1820s, apostates. The Wall Street shaver. Did my friend announce himself in the inner door of the temple with the Shibboleth of Yakin and Boaz? Okay, you got to know what the temple, the pillars are, right? The pillars. This is in the testimony of Solomon. You got to understand this stuff, folks, apostates, because there's a book called the Yakin and Boaz, right? Which is one of these books that was the release of these Masonic secrets. So you got to understand the lineage of why these books are being released, right? And who is releasing them for what purposes, right? So people say, oh, they're just books on Masonry. Okay, yes, they are books on Masonry, but what's going on? Why are they being released? Who's releasing them? What's the purpose? What is that author's story? What happened to him? Because most of these people ended up as martyrs. So this story of the Morgan, right? They even refer in this book, they refer to these people as being Morganized. And it says Smith was Morganized. Before Smith was Morganized, it says. Smith happened before William Morgan, right? These are the correlations I'm talking about, apostate congregation. It says it right here. I mean, it literally says it right here. Jachin and Boaz in his mouth. I forget which, for I don't recollect. Rather, it was just before or shortly after Smith from Vermont was Morganized for disclosing those Kabbalistic terms in this country. And when they were transposed by official communications from lodge to lodge to keep book masons from getting in among the lambskins. You got to understand what a book mason is, apostates. Do you see how you got to research? You can't just read this and be like, oh, yeah, okay. I mean, you got to know. You got to know what this stuff is. What is the lambskin order? What is the order of Enoch? What's their rank? Why are they talking about this? Who are they? Smith from Vermont, apostates. Look, says it right there. Okay, says it right there. Page 67. But be this as it may, the honest hatter pronounced the magic word, and the awful response admonished him to enter, when on a sudden open flew, which in prejudice recoil and jarring sound the infernal doors. But our hero was not alarmed. He entered not so much with fear and trembling as with a lively hope. And it just goes on. They talk about the grandmasters of the craftsmen. There were the 5 scribes and Pharisees who were carried on from while the noodles, right? The old noodle, he refers to the dupes, the idiots, the morons, right? He refers to them as noodles and noodle heads, right? The old noodle manufactory in North Pearl Street and afterwards at the court. He's talking about Canandaigua. At the time in Batavia has been formed executive director of France. Okay, here we go, France, where called the 5-headed monster. Okay, you got to know this stuff, people, and what this stuff means. The Yankee bookbinder. Who is the Yankee bookbinder, right? They're telling you this stuff, right? The Yankee hatter. So he's telling you right here, there's a Dutchman lawyer, the Yankee tavern keeper, the Yankee bookbinder, the Yankee painter, and the Yankee hatter, right? That's the 5-headed monster that he's talking about. Okay. The Yankee hatter is Smith from Vermont. Okay. The painter is Brigham Young. The bookbinder is Oliver Cowdery. The tavern keeper, I don't know who those people are. The Dutch lawyer is Wells, Daniel Wells. That's the Dutch lawyer, right? Yeah, so I mean, but when you read this stuff and you follow along, follow the names, follow who these people are, apostates, this is how you come to these conclusions. This isn't me just throwing crap out into the YouTube fear. I understand what's at stake here, right? If you read this book and what I'm saying on YouTube doesn't hold true to what this book says and what these other books say, then I'm not looking for clicks. I'm not looking for monetization. I'm not asking for money. I'm not part of the brothel. I don't, this is information. I want to correlate. I want to show people what Mormonism actually is. And these scholars and these Mormon historians, they're just so full of shit. They're doing such a disservice because apostates, these people understand, have built careers, they've wrote books, they've gone to school, they've invested time. For what? For what, apostate congregation? On my last video, when I was talking about Gleaning by the Way, the book, Gleaning by the Way, you can Google that book, okay? And you can read what scholarship, Mormon LDS scholarship, says about that book. And then you read the book. And you're like, what in the F are these scholars talking about? These are PhD scholars. And you read that book and you're like, what in the F are these guys? Because it's got nothing to do with what the book is even about. You can Google it and read it yourself, apostates. It's not me making stuff up. I am not, this is not my opinion. It's in the books, apostates. I keep telling you that over and over and over again on every single video. It's in the books. The answers that you're looking for are in these books. But you have to know what Solomon even is. You have to read the Testaments of Solomon. It's not long. You can go watch it on YouTube. There's tons of stuff on YouTube about it. Just look it up. Look it up on YouTube and watch a cool little video when they start talking about all the angels and how they threw the ring, and he brings the angel back and he says, what ails you? And then listen to those names and you'll recognize a lot of those names of those angels. That it just has to do with religion in general, right? And there you will also find Aziel. Because in history, I cannot find Aziel. Aziel Smith, Joseph's grandfather, right? But I find them all over in the Testament of Solomon and Solomonic magic and stuff like that. Let's keep going. Okay, high son of the rising brother. Okay, that's important because of later Mormonism, the Brigham Young era. Okay, then there's the plot to kill Morgan, right? He's talking about the plot, right? Okay, let's move. Let's get to page 67. Oh, did we pass it? No. Yeah, that was the Smith, right? Yeah. Okay. Oh no. Yep, I did read it. Okay, I read it. I want to make sure that I don't forget anything, apostates. We're running super long here, so let's try to wrap this up. I got one more Smith reference in this book. Shit, what page is it? 72. Okay. So apostates, back to my you got to know what Solomon is, right? On page 73 right here, Solomon is referenced all throughout Freemasonry, right? The wisdom of Solomon, the magic of Solomon, it's referred to in Freemasonry as the craft. Okay, the craft. Okay. It's the magic of Solomon, which is the greater keys of Solomon, right? That's what this is. Me and you today call this black magic. But if you were a Christian, you would call this the basis of your religion. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I apologize. Okay, 72. 72. So we're talking about Smith from Vermont again, okay? And he's talking about the Yankee friend, okay? So all throughout this book, he talks about the Yankee friend as like it's his personal friend. Like he knows this guy. It's his Yankee friend, the Hatter, right? He knows, like on a personal level, he says that the Hatter was a good person. I mean, he says that. And he's talking about Smith from Vermont is who he's talking about, right? But Smith from Vermont gets Morganized, okay? It was about these days, as our honest almanac makers say, that unfortunate Smith from Vermont was Morganized for publishing the same book. And not many years after, poor Murdoch of Rennes-sur-Loire, or whatever, right? It's a French name. Shared the same fate because, oh, this is where it talks about Murdoch. Because his wife had learned it by rote and repeated it among the gossips of the village. The unfortunate woman, not dreaming that she was, by the propagation of such light and learning, to bring herself to a state of widowhood, and her children to that the orphanage. It was perhaps unfortunate. It was perhaps fortunate to me that my wife, I had learned, right? And then he kind of goes into his own personal story, and he's talking about 1795. Okay, and that story right there on page 73 is really rings home with Martin Harris, like the Martin Harris story on April Fool's Day, right? All right. So then he just talks about the pretend patron, the order to the Persian worshippers, right? The origin of our order. Okay, he talks. So Samuel Pritchard in 1730, right? Samuel Pritchard writes a book, right? And so, but these names, right? I want to show you Morganized again, the patron saint, right? The pretend patron saint, right? So this the secret association, right? The Masonic lodge, the dupes, from you becoming a dupe, and the victims, right? And so this whole thing is a warning. So he's talking about on page 92, he's talking about how Frederick the Great of Persia, right? And where these ideas came from, right? Heathen or a pagan philosopher, Voltaire, de Malbran, Bollinger, and other French authors, together with Thomas Paine's Age of Reason. If you've never read Age of Reason, Apostates, I highly recommend that. That's a great. Okay. Yeah, so he just goes on and he talks about how I consider Witchet, which happens to be me in crossing of Shorek Mountain, which I did several times between August 26th and April 27th of 1826 and April 27th. The circumstance above alluded me to the serious labors and equity. And so he's questioning the authenticities of Christianity, right? Revelation of the Arabian impostor, right? And when you read these things in the context, it's so clear, like who these people, like what they're talking about, right? Okay. Let me see if I got anything else going on here. I think that does it for this book. But so, oh, here's something. The Rock of Ages. The more enemies I have, the more shall I rejoice. For the more good shall I be in the sign above alone than I am doing in the cause of civil liberties and the celestial religion, my humble talents. Okay. So all through this, he's talking about a religion, right? And it's so fascinating. So that's this book, Apostates, A Solemn Warning Against Freemasonry. The next few videos, I'm going to do kind of a little series, are going to be about how this stuff is not anti-Mormon. I want to be very clear about that. I am not being anti-Mormon. These books are not anti-Mormon. I want you to understand that. This is not anti-Mormon. Nobody's bashing Mormons here. We are not bashing Mormons. Is what we are bashing is the Mormon institution. And how since 1820 or 1926, William Morgan is the first whistleblower to tell us the Church of Masonry is coming and you better stop it now. The Church of Masonry is the LDS Church. And I'm proving that through these books. This is not my opinion. We're going to do quite a few videos on this book, Light on Masonry. This is David Brainerd's book. Okay. When you read these books, apostates, like and subscribe to the channel, you have to read the preface. The preface is telling you the intent of the author and why they're writing the books in the first place. Okay. William Morgan's book is not finished. This book is not finished. Okay. David Brainerd takes his book and finishes it. He says it in the preface. And you will understand why the Lewiston Lodge in this book is important. Connecting these dots. You will understand why the Order of Enoch in Mormonism and Joseph Smith's is important. You will understand why the esoterics of Freemasonry are involved in Mormonism. You have to understand who Solomon is. You have no chance if you do not understand, if you do not read the Testament of Solomon. You don't understand Freemasonry whatsoever. You can talk all the handshakes and hand signals and it's the temple ceremony this and it's the that and whatever. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. I don't care. I don't want to hear it. I'm not interested. Unless you know what you're talking about. You don't know what John the Baptist has to do with Freemasonry. Why is John the Baptist in Freemasonry? Who baptized Oliver Cowdery and Joseph Smith? John the Baptist. Do you understand, apostates, what's happening here? The Church of Masonry is the LDS Church. The Joseph Smith Jupiter Talismans. For God's sake, I just showed you. I'll show you again just for fun because I love doing it because it puts so many, right here, it puts so many historians and LDS scholars out of business. That one picture right there, that one picture. That's the back of the talisman right there. That's in the Greater Keys of Solomon. You got to understand what this book even is. Who is Solomon? Why? What is the Keys of Solomon? What are they? What's their significance? What's their importance? Why are they valid? And I don't want to hear no. Look, apostates. I've got Agrippa. Okay, it's actually in here too. Look. Right here. It's in there too. Okay. Do you know what that table is? Apostate congregations on the back of the Jupiter talisman. Do you know what that represents? Let me show you. This right here. Do you know what that represents? The numbers. If you understood Solomonic magic, all you scholars and historians, you would know what that means. And you would end all of this garbage about how it's up in the air and folk magic and woo, we don't know. Yes, we do know. You're just selling books now at this point. All you scholars and authors and all that kind of garbage, Mormon historians, you're literally selling books at this point. You're grifting people. You're hoaxing people. You're grifting people for clicks, for video watches. Apostates, do you know what that means? This is what is called money magic. It's the money magic of Solomon, okay? That right there is what's called the third pentacle of Jupiter. You can Google that and you can look it up and you can see it, or you can get just go right to the source. F Google, buy the book. You can buy them. These are the Ars Goetia. You can see right there. All that stuff's there. The Lemegaton. Okay, it's all there. This is the greater keys, and this is what's called the lesser keys. These are the lesser keys. Okay. Those are Jewish numbers. Those symbols on the back of there, they represent numbers. They're Jewish numbers, and those numbers equal 136. Okay, and you can do them in whatever cross, right, up and down, whatever, right, and it equals 136. Okay, this is what's called money magic. It's the money magic of Solomon. Okay, and it actually describes it in these books. Okay, you can go on YouTube and you can YouTube search money magic of Solomon. Okay, there's actually rituals on there. You can watch the videos of these people drawing their circles with their sword of Laban's, right? Drawing their circle. It's not called the sword. It's the sword of Laban is just what Joseph called it, right? But they got the sword, okay, and you can physically see the ritual yourself that Joseph Smith is doing. You can see it yourself. It's called money magic, okay? The Book of Mormon is blue. This is why I tell people the Book of Mormon is blue. In money magic, I give you something blue. It already has a spell on it. It's already been predetermined, right? I give you something blue. Apostate congregation, what is blue that you get for free in Mormonism? The Book of Mormon is blue. What is the intent of Mormonism? For you to become a tithe payer. Okay? Now I'm giving you something blue, the Book of Mormon, that has a spell on it with the intent for you to give me money. That's what that spell is, for the intent for you to give me money. What is tithing? You're giving the church money. So I ask you, apostate congregation, did the spell work? Look at the church today. Does Solomonic magic work? This is Solomonic magic. It's called Solomonic magic. Solomonic magic, the magic of Solomon. Okay? That's what this stuff is. Apostate congregation, it's in the books, man. I'm not making any of this up. It's in the books. It's in the books. This is a grip up. Okay? It's in these books. He's telling you it's the intelligence of Jupiter. And then he goes through and he gives you the intelligence of Saturn, and he gives you all this stuff, right? The spirit of Jupiter right there. You know, I mean, come on, apostates. Okay. I mean, you know, apostate congregation, these people have done such an injustice. I want to change the paradigm. I want to change the way that Mormon history is talked about. You know, if you watch any Bible critic or anything like that, right? You don't have, you know, if you're criticizing the book of Daniel, or if you're criticizing the book of Job, you know, yeah, there's the people that are like the diehards and stuff. But you don't have like in Mormonism where they're coming after you and they're gonna like burn your house down. I mean, yes, you do have some of that stuff, but not like in Mormonism. In Mormonism, nobody talks. There is no critique. There's no critique, and in the critique that you do get is stuff that the church itself, the cult itself, has released. There's nothing outside apostate congregation. Do you understand that people are looking? And then when they do look at it, they just do it in such a way that it's either faith promoting for the church or just completely smears whoever's saying it or whatever. Do you understand, right? So like, I want to bring a new look, let's go to the outside sources. Let's understand what we're looking at. Why are we looking at Freemasonry and Mormonism? Why is Smith from Vermont being Morganized, right? Why does the church have all this stuff on William Morgan? Why is Lucinda Pendleton married to Joseph Smith? right? Lucinda Pendleton is William Morgan's widow. Why in the book that I just told you about last week, or my last video, is the old widow Morgan mentioned in the book? And Orson Pratt, I think it was Orson Pratt, or no, it was, who was it? I forget who it was, but somebody had the damn bed, had William Morgan's bed. Lyman White, that's who it was. Had William Morgan, he's sleeping in William Morgan's bed. He's telling you this is the story. Apostates. I don't know how much more clear I can be, so I'm just going to keep doing videos, because wait until I get to this book, Light on Masonry. Joseph Smith is all over in this book, all over. Daniel Wells, Orson Pratt, Orson Hyde, Lodom Lawson, they're all over in this book, right? And you know, the funny thing is they're telling you about the Masonic aspects of things, right? And then when you listen, if you're a Mormon, see, that's the thing, is I grew up, I was born and raised in Mormonism, so I know these stories, I know the correlations, right? But the thing that I never knew, I've always known the story of William Morgan, and I've yeah, but you know, like, I've never actually read it before. And that's what changed, is when I actually read these books. And as a Mormon, as an LDS, I was born and raised in the cult. My whole family's still in it. I know these stories. I know these names, these people, what their roles are in the church. And when I started reading books on William Morgan, I'm hearing names like T.F. Talbot, David C. Miller, Orson Pratt, Orson Hyde. These names are in these books about anti-Masonry that has nothing at all to do with Mormonism. There is no Mormonism at this time, apostates. You must understand that. There is no Mormonism at this time. So please understand that. And you ask yourself the question, why are these people in these Masonic books talking about the Order of Enoch, the Lambskin Order, the Hatter, Smith from Vermont, these stories, the Church of Christ, William Parrish, you know, apostates, I really got it. I mean, you watched it here live. I was literally thumbing through old notes, and I had stuff written down, and I was like, get out of here. Because it's stuff that I've been looking at today that I completely forgot that I even wrote down. This was 2 years ago I wrote this stuff down. Okay, apostate congregation, I'm done talking. I need a drink of water, and it's getting late. Thank you for taking your time. I very much appreciate all of your time. I would like to address some of the commenters real fast and very briefly. I am taking, whoa, I almost just lost all my stuff here. I'm definitely taking notes of what you're saying, your criticisms of this sort. A commenter the other day, I don't even believe is a subscriber, I don't know, but they commented, and at first their comment was not so friendly. And I replied, hey, thanks for the kind words. Being kind of a smartass, right? Well, I think that loosened that person up a little bit, and it became a conversation about them legitimately giving me constructive criticism. And I asked for that on this channel, right? Because this is an interactive channel, and I'm very not good at getting my point across, getting my message of what I'm trying to say across. And I understand that, and I know that. And so this person was kind of giving me advice to help me with that. But see, it just goes to show you, apostates, we're not dicks on this channel. We're not here to harm nobody or, you know, beat up anybody or, you know, yeah, we get a little forceful with our language sometimes and things of that sort, but we're not there. We got nothing against anybody personally. There's no personal, I'm not, these historians, they're not bad people. They're just, I don't know. They're in the brothel. They're the word that comes to the mind is prostitution. They're prostituting themselves. Apostate congregation. Like and subscribe to the channel. I have gone on way too long, an hour and 30 minutes. Anyways, keep out for further books. We are William Morgan. We stay true to the text, apostate congregation. This is not our opinions. I hold up the books. I give the references. That's why I did that tonight, was because of that commenter. I said, okay, well, here's the page. Okay. I love it. I love it. I love all of your guys' comments. Like and subscribe. This channel is not monetized. So the only way that you can help the Mormon atheists, support the Mormon atheists, is by subscribing, liking, sharing, watching the video all the way through. Watch these videos all the way through, because the watch time hours help, believe it or not. And yeah, so we can get the word out there. Tell your friends, share the videos, hit the bell so you can, because I come on at random times. So hit the bell so you know when I'm on. That way it'll pop up in your feed. And that way it also helps the algorithms as well. So comment, like, subscribe, share, watch the videos all the way through. Tell your friends. We are not monetized. We will never be monetized on this channel. Apostate congregation, thank you, thank you, thank you for taking your time, helping me do the research, doing your own research. I love the fact that you guys do your own research, and that reflects in the comments. Your comments are so golden to me, because I love it when people say, in their comment, they'll say, I like how you lead us in the direction, but you never tell us what to think. Boom, that's beautiful. That is the best compliment I could ever receive, ever. That is the best. Thank you for that. And I get that often. A lot of you say that. Thank you for that, because I'm not trying to give my opinion. I want you to research this stuff and come to your own conclusions, because it's there. You would have to be a complete fool to not see this. Your cognitive dissonance level would be off the freaking charts. If you read these books, watch my videos, go back through, research what I talk about, you would have to be a fool. You're just trying, or you pigeonholed yourself into a position like some of you have, historians, specifically you, Meatball, you pigeonholed yourself. And I tried to get you to work with me, and you wouldn't, because you're who you are and I'm who I am. F you, dude. Now you are pigeonholed, because the conversation has moved past you. So now you're just a grifter. This is all you are, is a grifter. Okay? But you still have a chance. You can still come out and say, hey, man, yes, this is Solomonic magic, because people would listen to you. Nobody's going to listen to me. They're going to listen to you because you have clout. But you're willing to die on that folk magic sword. And that is a shame. That is a shame. Because you're a freaking fantastic guy, man. But anyways, you cannot deny the esoterics. This is the Book of Mormon in the Deseret alphabet, right? Google the Deseret alphabet. All right, apostates, I'm done. I'm out. We're done. 34 minutes. An hour and 34 minutes. Sorry. Like, subscribe to the channel. Let's get going. Stay tuned for the next episode. And goodbye, apostate congregations. Have a good night, and please subscribe. Thank you.